In abusive spiritual systems, power is postured and authority is legislated. Therefore, these systems are preoccupied with the performance of their members. Obedience and submission are two important words that are often used. The following is an excerpt from a church newsletter from the pastor's personal column, titled Fallen from Grace. Last week, we fell below the 200 mark for the first time in 13 weeks. Our 200 plus attendance mark has been stopped at 13. It happened. We fell from grace. I would like to see all of our folks join together for worship during these next 4 Sundays and help the year go out with a bang. We can make this truly a banner year at our church. We've had great attendance, great giving, great participation in all of our programs. Let's set the stage for a brand new decade by getting graced up again. Now, did they have grace because they had 200 people? Did that achieve grace for them?
No.
Did they lose grace because they fell under 200 people?
No.
But that's exactly the message that was presented under this, because our attendance, because our performance has dropped beneath the level, we must be spiritually deficit somehow. And it's likely that this evangelical pastor would equate church attendance with obedience to Christ. But God teaches that he first looks upon the heart. God is concerned that we do not do the right thing for all the wrong reasons. Yes, obedience is non-negotiable. Yet, the way to tell if someone is doing the right thing for the wrong reason is if they're keeping track of it. If your obedience to God is flowing out of you as a result of your dependence on God alone, you don't keep track of it. But if you're preoccupied with whether or not you've done enough to please God, then you're not looking at him, you're looking at your own works. And you're concerned about who else might be looking at you and evaluating you. We can see that through the example of the Pharisees, and I don't have time to go through the scriptures right now about his teaching about stop talking about all the stuff you're doing, because if everybody's looking at you, you got your reward. But it's one of the key condemnations that Christ uses when talking about the Pharisees and the religious system of his day. For many reasons, followers sometimes obey or follow orders in order to avoid being shamed, to gain someone else's approval, or to keep their spiritual status or the church's position or the church position intact. This is not true obedience and submission. Just because you do it because somebody expects you to or because it's legislated, that doesn't mean that it's obedience. That is compliant, self-seeking conformity. I'm looking for something out of what I'm doing, namely not to be shamed, to be accepted. That's not if obedience, because it's not flowing from who you are. That's being compliant rather than being obedient. Two different ideas. What drives my actions? What drives me to do the things that I'm asked to do? What drives me to do the things that would be pleasing to God? Is it because there's a law or a rule that says I'm supposed to do it, or is it because it flows out of the nature of the relationship that I have with Him? When behavior is simply legislated from the outside instead of coming from a heart that loves God, it cannot be called obedience. It is merely weak compliance with some form of external pleasure. I think I put in your notes Romans 12:2, which I think it's in there, referred to that. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Conformity versus transformation. Conformity. Is that a word? Confirmation, but yeah, it is today. Confirmation versus transformation, we'll say. The objective of Christianity is not behavior modification. This is not a performance-based relationship. This passage from The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse highlights the difference between compliance and obedience. Compliance is legislated by rules, whereas obedience is an action prompted by interaction. This distinction highlights the mentality of those who live in spiritually abusive communities where a performance and shame-based relationship with God is presented. They believe that they are accepted by God and thus rejected by God on the basis of their actions. God is much more concerned with interacting with his people than them relating with him on the basis of action.